At Vibra Finance, we seek out the hidden gems in cryptocurrency. We will tailor your portfolio to work for you. Are you ready to transition your investments from traditional markets to cryptocurrency? Are your coins staked and earning interest? Are you overwhelmed with all the jargon in crypto? Is your portfolio underperforming and you want to reposition into consistent winning blue chip coins and viable projects? Do you feel like you missed out on DeFi, Metaverse, and NFTs? Here at Vibra Finance, we provide you with the data, skills, and tools you need to stay on top of the digital asset market. Vibra Finance, we are the future of crypto.
Hello and welcome back to Vibra Finance. CEO is off on business, so I took over the studio. Tonight we have a very special guest, round two with Mr. Brandon Joe Williams, and I'm going to introduce him right now. Brandon King, welcome back.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have you here tonight. And tonight's topic is relationships, sex, money, and trust. And I know you are well-written, well-spoken, well-versed in all of these areas, so we could take it anywhere you'd like to. But my first question to you is, what do relationships, sex, money, and trust have in common? And why are people so conditioned these days to give it away?
Oh, you're hitting me with some new ones today. Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
I would say, a relationship is essentially a trust, right? So you have basically kind of two trusts. You have one trust in one direction, where the one party is the trustee and the other party is the beneficiary, and then it kind of flips, and you have the other party, which is the trustee, and then the other party is being the beneficiary, and it operates sort of the same way as kind of like in my book, Love is a Battery. It operates the exact same way as an AC current. Alternating current. If you look up a simple video on YouTube as to how alternating current works, it's basically the exact same functionality. It's just two trusts that flip back and forth over and over and over again, and it's the same idea. I mean, a relationship, if you think of it in that way, a relationship should be ended when either party feels as though the relationship is no longer benefiting them. I mean, I think of it from a completely logical point of view, from a completely, information-based point of view, to the point where, yeah, fine. That's why the whole marriage thing, it's just, I don't think that this whole to death do us part thing, I don't think that's really real. I don't think that was ever supposed to be that way. I don't think that was ever really supposed to. I mean, it's really easy for me to win this argument too, if I were to argue with people over what marriage is, because the thing is that the fact that there's a marriage license, and the fact that people actually go and get them, and the fact that the state, which is a corporation, is married in as the third party on a marriage license, that in itself is evidence that the entire idea of marriage is extremely fucked up. I would go so far as to say, of everything I teach and of everything that I talk about, the thing that has been converted from originally the most beautiful and then subverted into something so terrifyingly satanic, it would be marriage. Because people are going out and getting a license to get married, so they're asking for permission from a corporation. It's like going to McDonald's and asking permission to eat. And then when they do get this license, this permission to get married, the marriage includes a third party. And I even found literal case law on this. I can share it with you guys. Case law resource marriage. Right, I'll do a screen share.
Because nobody believes me when I tell them that. When they say, like, oh my gosh, we're getting married, I'm like, congratulations on your relationship. Let's talk about the marriage part.
Yeah, if someone tells me they're getting married, it's the same thing as telling me that they're about ready to go on like a meth binge or something, or like a heroin binge. I'm like, all right, hope you survive. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like my reaction. But it's so sad because my reaction is based off of the legal consequences of that, which the other party saying these things is not aware of, obviously, right? So this is just one example. So for people who are more legal minded, this is from an appellate court in Illinois. So if you're not in Illinois, it would be considered persuasive authority. It has been said that marriage is a civil contract to which there are three parties: the husband, the wife, and the state. And it is regarded as a status based upon public necessity controlled by law for the benefit of society at large. That is the definition of a marriage if you get a marriage license. If you don't get a marriage license, this doesn't apply. The marriage license is what converts everything over to this definition, right? Let's see here. Illustrative of this point is the case Ertel v. Ertel. Let's see when that one was. No, that wouldn't be it. Let's see. It's only giving me that original. It's not even giving me the... Okay, I don't know when that comes from, but anyways. Illustrative of this point is the case Ertel v. Ertel 313 Illinois appeals, in which it was held that the statutes and construction thereof by the courts of review of Missouri, the place of the marriage, govern the question of the competency of the husband to enter into a marriage. And this is why you have, what is it when you get a divorce and then you go through the courts? Is that probate? I forget what term or what kind of court it is, but that's why you go through those courts during a divorce, is because you're going to the government and you're requesting the disconnection. So you're requesting to start this corporate relationship. And it's actually a three-way corporate relationship. And then at the end, you're basically, it's like going through a business merger. And then when you get a divorce, it's like going through a dissolution and splitting the businesses back up into three different businesses.
Exactly. It is exactly like that. And the treatment that you receive depends on the court that you end up in.
Yeah, and it even says that the marriage is essentially a corporation that is essentially when you register it and get a license, it operates from the view of the state in a way that has to benefit the public. And basically the only way that they can structure that sort of organization is by converting it into a business. So it's essentially a business where the people inside of the business or trust are the trustees, and then the general public are the beneficiaries. So that's why even with married couples and stuff like that, that's why there's a lot of weird things. Like, for example, in the law, you're considered one person in the law. That's because your sole proprietorship and their sole proprietorship are going through a merger. So the two sole proprietorships merge when there's a marriage license.
Right. And not only merging, and if you merge two souls with that and you bring some property into that situation, that makes it that could be a whole episode in itself, and that's a completely different dance too.
So anything that's owned by the marriage is actually owned by the state, and anything that's produced from the marriage is owned by the state.
Including your children.
A married couple having children are going to have a lot harder time controlling the rights of ownership of those children than if they were not married. That's why I'm telling you, marriage is the ultimate. It's the most beautiful thing in the world under God that has been dragged down to the deepest, darkest bowels of hell.
Yep, it has been.
It's the most beautiful thing that has become the ugliest thing on the planet.
They take something beautiful, like the idea of what Christmas could have been, and then they give it to Coca-Cola in that situation. So it's a nightmare. Like,
Marriage is completely satanic. And I don't use that term very often. I don't really use that term to describe anything except marriage. I know it's a very overused and trite term in a lot of the conspiracy theory angles, so I'm very careful. I don't want to overuse that term and make it trite. I don't want to. For those people who may be listening who are not familiar with my platform, I literally have not used that term to describe anything, I don't think, except marriage. It's the one thing that I to me, it's literally a full satanic. It's like 6-point star with blood on fire with like goat head masks shit, like for real. Like
really
for real.
I wish that I could argue that you're wrong, but like just looking at the definitions of, looking at the box that you're putting in, and then having to literally stand in front of someone and beg for permission to use your God-given name again, which that's a whole different show and a whole different topic with your Enslages and your all of that. But what I'm saying is like to use my last name again on paper, I had to go and beg for and pay for permission to use it again. Now, if you're in a committed and serious relationship,
real quick, plus another important thing about marriage is it becomes a weapon that's used against you in many, many ways. For example, the IRS can use it against you as a weapon to prove that you're a resident and not a citizen of your state. So they can use it against you to prove residency. They can use it against you to prove, I know in some states it doesn't prove residency, and some it does. Some it does not, and some that it does like statutorily. But the thing is that it allows and it opens the door for this strong presumption of residency rather than citizenship. So by having a marriage license, it essentially for people who may be new to my platform, it might sound kind of strange to say it, but having a marriage license is sort of like converting you into like a permanent immigrant. Or at least there's a rebuttable presumption of you being a permanent immigrant. It's sort of like having a marriage license is sort of like having a green card. It's not on the same level as a green card, but it's either damn close to it, or at least there's like a connection that allows agencies and stuff like that to place up the presumption that would be the same presumption as if you had a green card, and nobody knows how any of this shit works, so they're able to get away with it. The marriage license sort of opens the door for that kind of attack, shall we say. It makes you much more prone to attack, shall we say.
Yep, absolutely. You're connected in ways that you're not even aware that you're connected to until you try to disconnect those tentacles and you find out that they're everywhere and in everything.
Yeah. Because if even if they can't statutorily connect you being a resident, let's say you got married in Illinois and you live in California now, the presumption in some states, they can use that as a presumption that you are a resident of Illinois. In some states they can't, but they can use it as a presumption to say that you were recently a resident because you signed the marriage license stating that you were a resident of Illinois however many years ago. So the thing is that now they can put the presumption up that you were a resident 5 years ago of Illinois. Now they ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? And they would make you, without even knowing what they're doing, which is kind of the funniest part of all of it, they would kind of treat you as a resident, even in California, they would treat you as a resident, right? So it creates this presumption that no one knows even anything about, and even if you did, they don't know how to fight it. It's literally a nightmare. I mean, marriage licenses is like it's like lowering yourself into the middle of the ocean and there's just sharks everywhere and you have no weapons. I mean, it's literally satanic. Like it's an actual satanic ritual, full blown.
It's just you and the love of your life going for a swim. What are you talking about?
Marriage used to be something really beautiful. The original idea of marriage is something beautiful. It's what it became legally that is satanic.
So Fix wants to know, if you have been married and now are now happily divorced, how do you cancel the contracts? I said to amend them, but can you expand on that?
If you're already divorced, as far as I know, you've already severed that. You're already done.
Well, the word divorce hangs around your head like a yoke on an ox, let me tell you. So your credit score drops. You are like, you check the box divorce. You might as well be wearing a huge scarlet letter A, paint the town red.
Again, that all comes down to presumptions. Why would you check the box divorce? Fuck them. If they want to prove your divorce, let them find it and prove it. The biggest issue in all of law is you check the box. Why in the fuck are you checking boxes? You're fucking retarded. Anyone checking boxes is fucking retarded.
Yeah, thank you for that, because so many people don't even understand that the boxes on those forms are optional.
It's not even optional. Why are you even it should just be fuck you across the whole center of the whole thing. Fuck you. That should be how you answer a bunch of boxes. Go fuck yourself. There's a bunch of little boxes. You're going to make a new one. It's going to be a little box. You're going to color that one in, and it's going to say go fuck yourself. That's the one you're going to color in.
Yeah, that's right. So don't check any box. Don't put divorced on anything unless you want your credit score to drop.
If you think I'm divorced, you prove it, and you have good luck, because I'll be beating the shit out of you the whole time.
Yeah, but you're right. Once you go through that divorce process, you are done. That is done. You're donezo with that court situation. And then if you look back and things that you find in your contract or the dissolution of your contract that you didn't like, you can always amend them. It's just a pain in the butt, but it's possible.
Yeah, there's two ways out of a marriage, as far as I know. I've never done it. There's divorce and there's annulment. Annulment is basically like making the original documentation that created the marriage null and void, typically through some sort of fraud.
Which I highly, highly recommend. And like the D word, it's not even the stipulation of divorce itself that I'm so opposed to. It's if you are in a situation where you are not with the person, you're recognizing the situation just isn't working for you anymore. If you can come to some sort of agreement for an annulment, write your own damn contract, dissolute your marriage contract in an annulment, have the agreement to you, and leave the courts and the state out of it. It's just a headache.
Yeah, I mean, you could write up a document that says you were on heroin when you signed it, and it's fraud because you were on heroin or on psychedelics. You thought you were paddling a canoe when you signed the document. That would mean that the original document is hereby annulled, because if a person believes they're paddling a canoe and they're actually signing a legal document, well, that nulls the legal document because the person didn't know what they were doing when they signed the document.
That's right. A contract is null and void if the contract was made under fraud or coercion. No agreement, no contract.
I'm sorry. I thought I was rowing a boat when my hand and that paper and that pen made those motions on the paper. I don't know. Whatever.
No, I'm sorry. He promised me we're going to live in the country, and then we got stuck in a little box in the city. So, yeah, rowing and signing.
Yeah.
It's women. But in all seriousness, if you're going down the route of you found your soulmate, congratulations. Now you're ready to commit to a lifetime together, and for some reason you decide, let's merge finances. One of my non-negotiables in a relationship is trust. Period. And contracts of control versus contracts of agreement come in there. So the contract of control is your three-way with the state. You, me, and let's go, Big Daddy. And then
Exactly.
There's agreements of trust, which are made between two people, not two people and a person, or two people and a person. You know what I mean. So how can you what's the best way to go about two people setting up that trust agreement for themselves? Each of them should have their own.
It's easy. I think Dan Pena says it best. Dan S. Pena, which I know it's hilarious. People are like, "What the hell is he's going to quote a Dan Pena thing here, talking about love and marriage?" Yeah, I am.
Yeah, he's a man.
Dan Pena says, "Don't do a deal unless you would do a handshake deal. If you wouldn't do a handshake deal with a person, you shouldn't be dealing with them. You can have a contract." But the thing is that if the person's standing in front of you and you don't trust them enough to do a handshake deal, you probably shouldn't even be doing a contract deal. That's basically how Dan Pena says it. So if a man or woman's in love and you're standing there and you're looking at them and you don't trust them well enough to do a handshake marriage, you probably shouldn't even try to do anything more with them. That's the real truth of the matter. And what often occurs, because if you've ever read Michelle Langley's book, Women's Infidelity, if you've ever read a lot of information like that, which they're fantastic books, 1 and 2, they're very hard to find in printed format, but you can find PDFs all over the internet because it's an older book out of print for a long time. When I was doing the advanced Amorati training with Zanparian personally, it was the only book that he recommended that we read. And he's like, it's literally the only book I recommend you read is Michelle Langley's 2 books, Women's Infidelity 1 and Women's Infidelity 2. When you read those books, you realize that, like marriage, a lot of marriage comes down to economics, and it comes down to the woman wanting to feel economically secure in the relationship. So she likes the idea that the state kind of wraps the chains around everybody and keeps everybody together because it gives her economic peace of mind. I'm not saying that's every reason why everyone gets married. I mean, obviously on the men's side, you have kind of the same thing. You want men want like the sexual part or something more connecting them to the woman in a way that where she can't leave very easily, that kind of thing. It kind of goes both ways, right? But if you think about it, on average, the primary reason why someone would feel compelled to get married, besides, let's say, like familial reasons, let's say you're of the Asian or Indian culture, and it's like a big thing where that's what you're supposed to do, and your family's like talking to you, and it's like, what the hell? And it's like, there can be like family-related pressure in certain demographics, right? But beyond that, the economic security for a woman and the sexual security for a man. But if you think about it, all of those ideas are all rooted in a scarcity basis. For a woman to be concerned about the economic security is because she has a scarcity in the area of economics. For a man to feel as though he would want to get married for sexual security, it's because he has a scarcity of sexual economics, shall we say. All right. So the solution to the problem is not to get married. The solution to the problem is for the woman to do whatever she needs to do to feel more economically secure in herself by herself, and for the man to help her do that, and for the man to go through whatever he needs to do to feel more sexually secure, and for the woman to help him achieve that as well. But most relationships, the opposing party, which in my definitional world would be considered the enemy, would be when the other person in the relationship knows that they can control the other individual in certain ways and then sets it up to make sure the woman does not ever get any sort of economic security in an effort to try to keep her in the marriage. Now that becomes, as far as I would classify, treason. That is essentially treason. And the way I look at it in my mind, it's very extreme, is that kind of behavior should be met with death. They should be hung, because that is typically what occurs to a person who commits treason. Because when you have a relationship of that depth, and then you can mix it with such a aggressive, horrific level of treasonous activity, the penalty for that is death. That's the penalty, even in the United States Code to this day, right now, sitting here, the penalty for treason is death.
Well, I'm sure some people would like to see it go that way, but
So that's the way. If that was the way this whole thing went down, you probably wouldn't see as much weird bullshit in this area as you do, because people would be afraid that they were going to get hung.
I would say there'd be a lot less tomfoolery out there if people.
That's what I mean. If you don't want to be in the relationship, end the relationship. It's not treasonous to end a relationship. If you don't want to be in the relationship, simply end the relationship. That's not treason. What's treason is to continue to be in it and then do weird, goofy shit to tear each other down within the confines of the relationship without ending it, or to lie or say things that are untrue to create deception. It's just like Sun Tzu says, all warfare is based upon deception. So when you start to deceive one another, you are in the same breath now involved in warfare. Anytime there is deception, by definition, there has to be warfare. If you find out someone is deceiving you, then you automatically, instantaneously, within that same moment, also just realized they are at war with you. You can't have deception without war. They're married together. They're the same thing. Deception is war.
And it does become war.
So if you're married to someone who's already declared war upon you, the best question to ask is, why are you there?
It's a huge question to ask yourself. Why are you there? Why would you contain yourself within confines of scarcity energy? Because that energy just breeds scarcity, and then it's a never-ending downward spiral. So
the fastest road to a stress-free life, coming from a guy who has an extremely stress-free life, let me tell you, is anytime anybody ever tries to deceive you in any way, shape, or form, they are essentially borderline permanently removed from your life forever. It's almost completely impossible to re-enter.
yes,
And that includes family, that includes your own mother, that includes your own father, that includes your own daughter, that includes your own son. No one is exempt from this particular rule. If you truly want to live a completely stress-free life, that is how you do it, and nobody has a get-out-of-jail-free card. Nobody. Andrew Tate, the Tate brothers talk about this. The Tate brother, I'm not the only one saying crazy shit. The Tate brothers talk about this. Dan Pena talks about this. Your big, huge, monster, ultra billionaire people, quite often you will hear this kind of thing come out of their mouth.
You have to protect yourself. And
Yeah, it just becomes very simple. Everything becomes very, very simple,
You lose like 200 pounds instantly. You really do. You feel lighter. And sometimes the hardest part about that is the actual process of just saying, that's it. I've had enough. I respect myself. And if you can't respect my boundaries, there's the door. Please don't come back in. And you don't even have to say it that nice. But it does feel really good to do that energetic cleanse. Look around you. Just take it out. Just start spraying. Just start spraying. And
you can even explain it in that same way. Be like, look, you're doing this activity, but you're telling me something different. So that means, by definition, you are deceiving me or attempting to deceive me. Since deception is the basis of all warfare, according to Sun Tzu, you have essentially, within the confines of your activities, have declared war upon me. I am letting you know that I will not have a social or sexual or romantic or familial connection with someone who I have no idea why, but for some reason they have declared war upon me. So unless you can clarify and correct course on this activity within the next 72 hours, this is your one and only warning that I will be exiting your life in a way that is almost entirely permanent within 3 days. Now, at that point, they can decide what they want to do, and they're going to backpedal and make excuses. And you just tell them, this is not anything up for discussion. In fact, I'm walking out the door because you have a few days now to think about what you want to do with this situation. There is no talking. Talking is irrelevant. It's like going outside and being like, okay, I know how to fix this, and going on a hot air balloon ride. What does a hot air balloon ride have to do with what I just told you? Talking is just as irrelevant as a hot air balloon ride. I'm leaving. You have 3 days to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. In 3 days, let me know, and then we'll do whatever it is you want to do. It's your choice. It's not my choice. You know, if you want to give somebody a little bit of leeway, I feel like that's giving somebody in my opinion, that's giving somebody quite a lot of leeway. To me, that's considered a pretty, that's really going pretty soft, in my opinion.
I was going to say that 72 hours, that's really fair, actually. That's pretty fair.
So, you know, it's just one of those things. And then I hear a lot from people, oh, I've got kids. Oh, I've got this. I've got that. I don't have kids. But you know what? That to me is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. So you mean to tell me that because you have children, you're going to make yourself a martyr by forcing yourself to stay inside of a relationship, which is actually just open warfare? How does that not hurt the children more so than help them? If you just disconnected that relationship and ended the war with the other party and separated out everything into two separate households, how is that not going to be healthier and better for the children than by them growing up thinking that a basic reality of how a woman and a man are supposed to be interacting is via deception and warfare? How is that not completely insane? How does that not reprogram the mind of the children to believe that the way that you're supposed to operate with the opposite sex is through deception?
It is crazy. It is traumatic. It is a perpetuation of trauma upon two innocent souls that do not deserve to be put in that situation. You are far better off to call it quits, walk away, have your separate space, save your energy, stop fighting with the other person. You're taking it away from those children. You're setting an example for those children of warfare, not peace and love.
And it's the same thing with all my shit. I have a lot of guys and dads and stuff, and they tell me, well, Brandon, if I didn't have kids, I'd probably be just as involved in all this legal stuff as you are. And I say to myself, okay, so what you're telling me is that you don't mind or care that your children are going to wake up inside of a dystopian nightmare. Just kill them now. Why not just put a fucking pistol in their mouth and end it now? Why wait 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years for them to live inside of a nightmare that they don't even understand? They don't even have enough awareness to even realize that they are inside of a nightmare, and then live the rest of their life in a digitized prison system that makes them think that they're doing okay when they're literally living inside of a living hell.
That's right. Have that conversation now and early. Start talking about Federal Reserve notes and all of it with their kids. They are little sponges, and especially if they go to a public school. Please start having these conversations with and appropriately around your children. The kids love it. Have you ever heard of the books, The Tuttle Twins?
Oh yeah, those are great.
They're fantastic. You get a set for Christmas. You get a set for Christmas. They're great reads for the kids. They're great reads together too. And and nothing is better than when I say somebody thinks that I'm crazy, and then my 11-year-old looks at him and goes, "Well, actually, according to the U.S. Constitution," or he'll code an amendment, or he'll pull up U.S. code, and I'm like, we're doing it. We're doing it here.
I'd say it's a much smaller percentage of dads that I've talked to, but there are some dads that are of the opposite mentality, where they say that they're going super, super ultra hard into the legal stuff because they have children. I'd say that's like 10 or 15% of the dads. I think maybe we're starting to see more and more of that little by little. I hope to see more of that in the future, because I think that's actually the correct reaction to this. The correct reaction is, because you have children, you should be 10 times more fired up than even I am.
That's right. What are you your children are your legacy, not just by name, but by spirit. And what are you leaving them with? What spirit, what tools are you leaving them here on earth? Because you're not going to be here to defend them. And if you're not educating them, no one else will.
Well, we got cyborgs, we got self-driving cars, we got drones. They're doing facial recognition now at the airport.
Please opt out, please.
They're doing real IDs. Trump is talking about getting Palantir AI into the government. If you don't see the writing on the wall within the next 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you're like basically Helen Keller.
So many people don't, though. I mean, it's in the circle that we're in here, and my friends here in crypto, it seems to be common knowledge and kind of like, oh yeah, of course, obviously. But if you step outside of that bubble and somebody's wearing a face diaper, like, you are not getting through to them. And it's I almost want to say devastating, because there's just no saving them. They will argue 100 ways from Sunday why they need that face diaper, and it's going to save their life, and somebody's daddy is going to come in and write them a check, and everything's going to be okay. So you have two different kinds of people raising kids out there. What kind of person are you raising this child? Are you teaching them how to actually defend and take care of themselves in this world? Or are you teaching them to be UBI dependent? Look to daddy to save me. Like,
yeah, I would never want to be a martyr if I had children, because I think that's a really bad example to set. In fact, I think it's actually the worst of all three choices. If you should between three choices, right? You have to be a martyr. Choice number 2 is to take things way down and be very under the radar and be very like grounded and under the radar and quiet, because you're afraid that something could happen to you because of your children, which is the one that people usually choose. And then the third choice is to not be a martyr, but to actually like go out there and really bare your chest and do what needs to be done. And even if I died in the process of doing that, I would still think that's better, because then it's like a lot of these big, huge political guys and stuff like that. If you notice, their kids see them die doing what they knew they needed to do and what they were passionate about. And then the kids of those political leaders or whoever it is wind up becoming even bigger threats to the system than their own fathers were, oftentimes, right? So if all the dads out there were willing to step into that third category, even if they died, they would still be setting the correct or a better precedent for their children. But the problem is that kind of thinking can also bleed into martyrism very, very, very rapidly, where then the purpose becomes to die in order to prove a point or whatever. So as long as you don't allow it to move in that direction, I think it's the only choice, personally.
teach them well. Teach them honor, teach them respect, teach them well. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like,
So
how could you not? All right. So we're talking about like family, marriages, trust, and those. I really wanted to talk about. We had talked about organizations, USC 1101A 28, if I'm correct, with definitions of organizations, and so that is part of the trust. So you're getting two people together. You're organizing yourself in a relationship situation, right? So if you both have your own trust set up. That's a way, that's a great, and if you're with a woman or with a man that doesn't have their own trust, that's a great way to, for your lady to set her up and help her to feel financially secure. That way, the money, I hate using the word money because what, like money, everybody, like 90% of people don't even know what money really is these days. So using the word money loosely there, if you give her the sense where she has her own income, has her own money, then that conversation that doesn't, it's never, I hate to see money break down a relationship is kind of what I'm getting into. And so that's why I wanted to talk about like relationships and trust and actual trust, like 508c1as and and PMAs, and how can you, or what is, man, I'm really tripping over my tongue here. It's heavy today. What is the best way to set yourself up for success together but independently so that you're leaving the state out of it?
well, back in the day, a marriage was just basically, kind of like an affidavit kind of thing, and then there was a get together, and then people would sign the witness book, and then that was it, and it went inside what's called the family Bible, and that was a marriage. There is nothing stopping anyone from doing that, but that option of that type of marriage would not include the teeth of the state. And the vows or the whatever associated with that marriage would just kind of basically just be whatever it is that you'd want them to be. It wouldn't be till death do us part. If you didn't want that to be a part of that terminology, then it just simply wouldn't be a part of that terminology. The vows are just simply whatever the vows are. If the vows are, I vow to, fuck your brains out as best I can as long as my dick works, then that's what your vows are. If that's what you want to bring to the table or deliver or offer, or if that's what you're going to vow, then that's what your vows become. So it's literally just a contract at that point, really. I mean, if you think about it, right? I mean, it is anyways. It is with the state too. It's just a different kind of contract with more of a police element to it. A marriage license is like a contract with teeth, or a contract with police. That's it.
That's right. So write your own contract. And I think that's an excellent exercise for two people that are looking to join into a long-term relationship anyway. Sit down and talk about where you are now, where you want to be in 5 years, what retirement means to you, where do you want to live, what do you want your children to do, like all of the things before it happens, before it's 5 years in and you're like, wait a second, that's not what you said. So actions speak louder than words on that one, but putting that pen to paper and actually writing your own contract in, not as in a marriage contract, but as in a relationship contract, I think that would be a really great way of, putting that union together, and then taking those accounts that fall underneath those trusts and then making them work for you as your family or your mission. So I've been working a lot with 508c1a organizations looking to bring themselves more into awareness of what we've been talking about tonight and what we talked about on our last episode. And one of the questions that I had for you tonight was depositing into the 508c, depositing Federal Reserve notes versus United States notes under 12 USC 411. So dancing around in that area. So go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. United States notes, as far as I know, I'm not totally positive as to exactly. If I were to go on to, I don't know, like Gronk or something and say, what is the difference? What is the difference between Federal Reserve notes and U.S. notes? I think U.S. notes are just government bonds, essentially. Because a Federal Reserve note is U.S. notes are issued directly by the U.S. Treasury Department, authorized by the Legal Tender Act of 1862.
Right. The notes are not in circulation anymore. If you still have one of those notes, you can still turn it in. It's still considered legal tender. But moving them digitally, like when the way that you're endorsing deposits into the 508 without recourse, or I'm sorry, not recourse. That was redeemed in lawful money, endorsing it that way into your 508. Have you
Well, the lawful money, that's the thing, though. The real loophole point of it all is lawful money has been banned.
Right.
So this whole 12 USC 411 thing, trying to convert Federal Reserve notes we came off of the ability to convert negotiable instruments to gold and silver coins in 1971 when Nixon gave the final chop. Because in 1933, we started the Emergency Banking Act. We were in that emergency all the way up until 1971 because we were supposed to, the whole point of the Emergency Banking Act was it was supposed to be a temporary solution. If you go back to the Civil War and you look up the legal tender cases, we did the same thing back during the Civil War to fund the Civil War. After we finished all of that, we went back onto the gold standard, and then when we went back onto the gold standard after the Civil War, that was considered one of the greatest economic periods in all of history internationally, because there was a whole bunch of different countries at that time period. The 1871 to 1914 time period was the time period when I think the most amount of countries were on the gold standard or something like that. It was a very, very economically high point in our world's history, right? So the Emergency Banking Act, which did that again, was supposed to be a temporary thing, and then it never was temporary. It stayed with us. And then in 1971, what Nixon did was he said that we're never going back. So he ended the emergency by saying that it was at the end of the emergency, we're supposed to go back to the gold and silver standard, but we're ending the emergency, but we're never going to go back to the gold and silver standard. And that was the true and complete beginning of the true fiat system. And if you look and what Gronk is telling me is the last U.S. notes were issued in the 1960s and production ceased in 1971, which is interesting because that would be date coincidence with when we came off of the gold standard out of the emergency permanently.
We're always in a stage, and we've been at WAR since the War Act itself. And every so often they like to throw another one, Patriot Act. They like to throw acts in there just to keep it alive. Because if we're not at WAR, then what's the propositional value of printing? How are they going to prop people to print endlessly if you're not like scared something's coming down the pipe? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, well, that's what I was trying to get at. If you'd come across anyone having a difference between endorsing the check with just their signature or endorsing it with redeemed and lawful money, if there was any difference in the tax implications for the 508 signing.
I don't think there is 12 USC 411 if we go to Cornell, Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances to Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents as hereinafter set forth and for no other purpose are authorized. The said notes shall be obligations of the United States, which is 18 U.S.C. 8, and shall be receivable by all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks, and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. They shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States, in the City of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve bank. Lawful money would be considered gold and silver coins. And the last time that this particular statute looks like it went through any sort of changes in accordance with Cornell is August 23rd, 1935, which was during the Emergency Banking Act, and it doesn't look like there's been any adjustments to this ever since. So I don't know how this would necessarily apply in today's world, because the conversion to lawful money is essentially illegal.
Well, of course it's convoluted. It's done by design to keep it convoluted. So there's always
most things, when you dig deep enough and far enough, most things make pretty good sense. This particular exact thing, at this point in my research, doesn't make sense to me, because conversion in lawful money is illegal.
Is that why crypto? Is that why Bitcoin?
Say it again.
Is that why? That's where this crypto? Is that where crypto and Bitcoin in particular, because that's the granddaddy big one and the first. So is that why crypto is being, infused or accepted?
Crypto is not money, and it's also not a negotiable instrument. It is a completely separate class. The only way that crypto would be considered money is there are crypto coins that are linked directly to gold and silver coins as backed by. Those cryptos would be legally classified as money.
We dance on that, yeah.
But the thing is that their crypto is not a negotiable instrument. It's either money or it's its own separate class. It can't really be a negotiable instrument, to my knowledge. I don't really know how a crypto would be an unconditional promise or order to pay. This doesn't make sense to me.
My mind's wrapping around smart contracts too. And like with the removal of middlemen, their smart contracts are open shut cases. So, all right, never mind. I was going to go down a total squirrel rabbit hole with that one, but I wanted to stay in a realm of trusts tonight. Do you have any tips, pointers? What's the first step somebody should take in looking at researching into a trust? Can we give them like someplace concrete to step into besides your video, which I did set up? I sent the link. It's in the comments in the chat. So you guys, I want you to check out that video that Brandon did, because he goes through it very extensively there.
Yeah, trust is a person, and it's born wherever you say it's born. Once it's born, you can naturalize it just by saying that it's located someplace else. And a trust in its most basic element is just simply a contract. The contract is written by the executor. Once written, it's the trustee's job to follow whatever it is that is in the contract, and then the beneficiary benefits from whatever's going on with the trust. And then in order for there to be a trust, there has to be some kind of asset in the trust. And the legal definition of that asset is called the res of the trust. And that's basically the basic functionality of a trust. It's a contract, which is a separate person. That trust is born wherever you say it is. And then once born, it can be moved, and its nationality can be changed whenever you want, as many times as you want, as often as you want. And that's the part of it having a nationality and a birth and naturalization. That's the part that you're not going to find any sort of attorney or lawyer that understands how any of that works. In fact, they're going to think that you're crazy or some bullshit. They don't understand that at all.
Lots of questions.
That's the part they don't get. And it'd be pretty fun to have a debate with a lawyer and show a lawyer the definition of the word person from 8 U.S.C. 1101 subsection B3, which is an individual or an organization, and then show him the definition of organization, which is 8 U.S.C. 1101 subsection A28, and then watch him. His mind is going to go 10 billion miles an hour frantically trying to make up excuses, and it's going to be absolutely hilarious to watch the fireworks show.
I find it is with a lot of these things when you just assume that people, when you walk into that courtroom or you walk into that situation, you just assume that they know what you know. And most of them know policies, statutes, procedures. They know the procedural end of it because
they don't even know statutes. They only know procedure.
Okay, I was giving them some credit with the statutes.
No, they don't know dick about statutes. They wouldn't know law if they were in a train accident that derailed and exploded. Statutes is barely within their perception at all, and then they're able to operate somewhat functionally using procedure. That's the extent of a typical attorney.
Yeah. I've had some rough ones. I've been introduced to some rough ones, and then there are actually some attorneys out there that are like, they're doing their job to the best of their ability with the confines of what their bar card allows them to do, but they still don't comprehend everything that they're doing. So it almost gets really frustrating when you're litigating back and forth, and you're receiving responses that have nothing to do with the questions that you asked. So it puts you into this like war mentality, war-like state. So it's hard not to get completely frustrated with the system as it is, because no wonder people just give up and say, okay, like I'm just gonna I've been conditioned to just give this away. I'm just gonna fold now and back off. Like even with like debt litigation and things like that. Like how many people do self-harm to get out of that situation rather than just showing up after a notice came and saying like, yo, what is this? This isn't mine. Take it back. Obviously there's more to it, but I feel like what you are teaching people is truly giving them a sense of empowerment. And if somebody goes through your process, if somebody goes through your second course and they don't come out with a bigger sense of self-esteem, then they've failed themselves, and they need to retake the course until they find that sense of self-esteem and sense of self-worth. Because I really feel like that's a huge piece that you give people.
Just knowing some of the definitions of the word person, just that alone, you're already farther than like a bar card who's been practicing professionally for like 35 years. Just that little piece. Just that little piece, you're already farther along than the typical bar card who's literally almost about to retire after a very long, successful career. You're already beyond his point of where he was when he retired.
Yeah.
So like reading my treatise on the word person on my website, if you were to take the time to slowly go through that whole treatise and understand each part, which it is pretty meaty, I will say that, you're already 1,000 times beyond a retiring judge, essentially. Like you're already ready to start having conversations at the U.S. Supreme Court level.
Yeah. And that's what you should be. I mean, honestly, if you're going through all of this and you're not preparing yourself like you're going to be standing in Supreme Court someday, then I don't know. Are you setting yourself up for success, do you think?
Well, it's just like anything else. If you are training to fight and you don't plan on being the international UFC champion, you're just kind of training for whatever it is that you think you're training for. If you're just trying to win some local district matches, then chances are you'll probably win some local district matches.
You get a couple wins under your belt. That always feels good, right? You gotta start somewhere. Start small. Start with something that's, I'm not saying easy to tackle, but it is. I mean, relatively, the hardest part is getting started.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I would say so, especially in the legal world, because up until my work and some work of some other people, where do you start? No one knows. There was no starting point. At least with my content, you've got the course, and then now, as of recently, we have the driving versus traveling article, and then we have the treatise on the word person. So signing up for the free course and reading the treatise on the word person and then reading the driving versus traveling article, you within 1 day or just a few days, you can know more about this information than somebody who had been studying it for 25 years previously.
And it takes you through a process. Let me tell you, when you first start dipping a toe into this information, I really feel you go through how many stages of grief are there? 7, 12, I don't know, 12 steps, 7 stages of grief. I don't know. But I really feel like it takes you through all of them. You get angry, then you get sad, then you're, then you're, I don't know, you're not calling anybody to say thank you, but you're called to say something else sometimes.
The hardest part of all of this is you can read the treatise in 2 hours, but then you're going to be walking around feeling like you just got hit by a train for the next 90 days. So really, if you think about it, it's really easy to read the treatise. What's hard is the processing of it. It's like an old computer from 1995, and it would make all those noises when it was processing information, like all these kind of I'm not even talking about dial-up internet. I'm talking about just the computer itself. And there was usually a turbo button on those old computers from the 90s, and you hit the turbo button, and the thing would get all even louder and crazier, and it wouldn't really make much of a difference in terms of actual performance, which is hilarious. It's sort of like that. It's like in today's world, we're used to, I have a fiber internet, so I have 100 gigabits or 1,000 gigabits down and 1,000 gigabits up all the time, right? But let's say I was trying to download, 490 terabytes of information. And it's just going to take a while. There's just not really any other way around it. Even with having excellent internet, it's just going to take some time to process, right? It's just studying this information, especially with the way that I feel like I'm able to get it with something like the treatise, it's just going to take some time to process. There's just no way around it. That's just the way it is. It's not that you're dumb. People may think, am I dumb? Am I this? No. It typically just takes some time to process.
Legalese unlearned. I love that phrase. Legalese unlearned. Gives you a little bit of leeway, little bit of forgiveness, a little bit of room to move. But putting this process into action helps to move that digestion process along, because it gives you a little bit of a dopamine trail to it. You know what I'm saying? when you get some success and you find an avenue in a corner that really interests you, the hardest part for me was like, okay, where do I? This is all right. This is it. Where do I start? And there is no answer because everybody has such a unique situation. There's no place where it's go to this, but you do an excellent job with walking them through in your course because that is the place to start if you don't know.
Yeah, the course and the treatise, it was just the course for the longest time. And then recently it became sign up for the course, but the course is one video per day for a series of days. So while you're waiting for those videos to come in, the treatise.
The treatise.
And then driving versus traveling is pretty much like becoming like this one here is becoming the second thing that a person should be reading right away, immediately, as soon as they begin the process.
Yeah, you're doing an awesome job of giving people resources and tools to use along the way.
Yeah, I'm basically making the treatise and driving versus traveling. They're like the two beginning. They're like the very first things people should be doing and reading.
Yeah, I absolutely I see that because they're probably the two places that are the most, like you said, it's like you just like put your finger in an electric socket, electrocute yourself, then try to walk around for 9 months not buzzing. You're gonna buzz for a while.
The
Maybe
course
not.
is kind of everything, but I think for like negotiable instruments and litigation, I feel like you can't really do like all written text for that kind of stuff. It's kind of a little bit, but the driving versus traveling, you can do all written, and then citizenship, nationality, and definitions and person and all. Like the treatise kind of covers all that stuff. I feel like you can do all of that with text. So it's sort of like the course is sort of like negotiable instruments. The treatise is sort of like nationality and citizenship and all that kind of stuff. And then you have driving versus traveling, which covers trusts, ownership, splitting titles, legal title versus beneficial title. And a person doesn't have to wait day by day and go slowly through the course. They can sign up for the course and then jump on this and go through this slowly, however long it takes. And then they can do driving versus traveling slowly, however long it takes. And then they can watch the videos as they come in as well. And by the time within 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, you're going to be farther along than what took someone previously literally over 25 years. So it's like 25 years in a month.
Boom, at your fingertips, non gratis. So say thank you.
Yeah, so and we're still obviously the whole point is to make it even better and faster and better and faster and better and faster. I mean, 25 years in a week is probably going to be about as good as we're ever going to get it. Maybe 25 years in 2 weeks. I don't think it's ever going to get better than that because the human mind just cannot process anything like that in that kind of speed. It's just too much.
It is a lot.
It's just going to hit it. We're going to hit a certain wall where it's just, that's it. That's all we can, that's all the gas we can give her. And then once we get to that point, that'll be the end of research, really. I mean, there'll be other ways we can say it or other ways we can do it or other ways we can think about it, but that'll be the whole point of research is to make it better, faster, clearer. And eventually we're going to hit the rock bottom on that eventually. Probably here pretty soon, actually, probably in the next year or so.
Like lightning tunnel speed, you have a super laser.
Like 2 weeks, and you're going to have like 30 to 40 years worth of what it would have taken someone before in like 2 weeks. Like a lifetime in 2 weeks.
Oh, man, I get chills. It's like that's like the craziest compilation of resources that people could get at their fingertips, and especially not having to go through some paid paywall, which if you're out there and you're looking at this and somebody's asking you to pay $1,000 and then they'll give them this information, like block them, delete them, take them off your radar completely, because they need your fiat, which means they don't know what the heck they're talking about. So if you're coming into a program that is giving you all of this non-gratis, it's I don't know. I get lost for words. As really as a gem.
Yeah, I haven't cracked infinite money on a physical plane, meaning I don't have a black card. I've discharged well over $500,000 using this information for sure. But which obviously contributes to why I'm able to give everything away for free and stuff like that. But in terms of like having a recycling source of credit where I can use it over and over and over again, and I have like some sort of legal contract or injunction or something that allows me to keep doing that over and over again, I haven't done that yet. So people say like, oh, Brennan, this is all theoretical. He hasn't really even done it yet. Yes and no. That's kind of true, but it's also kind of not, because the thing is that, I had, 277,000, whatever it was, from Amex that was discharged. I had a bunch of IRS debt that was discharged. I have not committed any felonies involving federal taxation, aka I have not filed a tax return over the last 2 or 3 years, so I've saved on that. So if you were to add everything up and then add up little things like smog checks for my car, or registration, or paying sales tax on large items. I have a lifetime sales tax exemption on Amazon. So by understanding the information, even though, yes, I don't have a judicial injunction that forces Amex to give me a black card, which is what I'm working on. I have cases in appeals courts. At the same time, by knowing this information, applying this information, and living in this way, you're saving so much in negotiable instruments all the time in every single direction. Plus, you're able to leverage financially in a way that no one's ever seen. You're like a whole different breed of financial operator. I believe on a spiritual level, if you really truly understand this information and you have a desire to help anyone in any area of life, I don't understand how currency and negotiable instruments and unconditional promises to pay, called Federal Reserve notes, would not just naturally flow into your hand and operate. I operate at a level that most people would consider to be fairly wealthy. I'm not a billionaire. I don't have 500 million Federal Reserve notes in a bank account somewhere. But in my mind, I am, and I operate as though I am. Because if I had to choose between understanding the information that I teach, especially things like 3-114, which is the one where handwritten terms prevail over printed and typewritten terms, which is one of my favorites in all of UCC 3-114. Yeah. Just understanding what this one thing means, this one sentence, to me, in my mind, is worth more than having 20 million Federal Reserve notes. You got to go up.
No.
Right there. Up, go up, right there, stop. That sentence, that's it. That's the whole thing.
If an instrument contains contradictory terms, typewritten terms prevail over printed terms, handwritten terms prevail over both, and words prevail over numbers.
Just that alone right there, when you really, really, really finally come to that final, oh my God moment, and you fully realize what this means, you have the potential to transact and create more currency than the Tate brothers. So yes, do the Tate brothers have more on-hand negotiable instruments at their disposal? Of course they do. A lot of people do. But the thing is that my knowledge of this subject and my knowledge of negotiable instruments is so far beyond any of these billionaires or trillionaires or whoever. If I had to choose between understanding the knowledge that I have and retaining it, or having billions of unconditional promises to pay in some sort of an account that I quote unquote control, which who knows if I really do or not, I would much rather have the information, because the information cannot be taken from you. You don't have to protect the information. If you have all these notes of these bank accounts, you do have to protect them, and they can be taken from you. The information cannot be taken from you. I don't need to protect the information. I don't need to set up trusts to protect the information. I don't have to litigate to protect the information. I don't have to worry about someone coming along and taking the information from me. When you understand the information is yours forever, and you don't have to do anything to protect it or keep it. Whereas with negotiable instruments and having them in a bank account, you do have to do those things. And even the Tate brothers will tell you, even Dan Pena will tell you, after a certain point, whatever it is, $10 million a year or whatever it is, anything above that point is kind of irrelevant. I mean, sure, you can start buying insane shit, but I mean, by the time you get to mansion and supercar, I mean, that's pretty much it. Maybe private jet, but $10 million a year, $15 million a year, that you're already in that classification of mansion, private jet, Bugatti. So like once you're at let's say you don't own a private jet, but you can charter them when you want to charter them. And then let's say you have a big huge house, big mansion, which in California, you know, even in California near the beach, if you wanted to get some huge monster house, you're looking at what, $5 million? But they have huge monster 15-bedroom monster properties all through Georgia, all through Louisiana that are, I've seen some for $1.5–2 million, and it's this whole fucking estate. It's literally like something out of Scarface. So the thing is that once you get to, I can charter private jets, I've got a Lamborghini, and I've got a McLaren, and I've got a 15-bedroom house that I don't need, that I can't even fucking clean. Now, once you get to that point, now what's next? And if you think about it, those things are not really all that hard to attain. I know for the typical person, they're going to say, Brandon's crazy. Those things are hard to attain. They're really not. A McLaren is a couple of $100,000. Big, huge monster house. Not in California. Obviously, that increases what it's going to take by a dramatic amount. Let's say Texas. Big, huge monster fucking house. Insane as fuck. Way beyond anything you could ever even need. Let's say $1 million. Even that's a lot. So you're at 1.2 million, and then you want to go on a couple trips a year, and you want to charter a private jet, which is going to cost you, I don't know what it would cost to charter a private jet for a few trips, probably like, let's say $20,000. I don't know. I have no idea. 20 to 50,000, let's say. So the first year, let's say you spent 1.2 million. Let's say 1.2 and then the extra 50 for the private jet. So now you're at 1.25 million. Now the second year, you already bought the McLaren. You already bought the home. So unless you have a mortgage or something like that, now all of a sudden you're not going to spend 1.25 million in that second year. Ideally, you would get a fee simple absolute title on that property, and you wouldn't be paying any property taxes. That would be the best way to do it. And then ideally, when you bought your McLaren, you got you never got the certificate of title. You never sacrificed the original MCO, MSO. So you're not going to smog it. You're not going to pay for registration. You're not going to be paying anything. So really at that point now, if you set up your home and your car in that way, all that's left is repairs, upkeep, cleaning. For a property like that, you're going to have a huge cleaning bill. You're going to have a huge electricity bill, unless, let's say, you want to install solar panels and you want to try to convert your whole property into something that's totally off the grid, and it's got solar and it's got these huge, big, powerful solar batteries. Now we're in a whole nother classification. So let's say you do that. So now all you have is repair, maintenance, cleaning, landscaping. You're going to pay for someone to mow the lawn, to trim the bushes, to clean the pool, to you got to have a tennis court, all this kind of stuff. So now you have to pay for, let's say, maybe a property manager, if you really want to go that far. And then you're going to have all these different workers that come by and clean and fix and paint and update and clean all your shit. Okay. And then you have to do the same thing with your McLaren. So now you have to make sure that the McLaren has these really expensive oil changes, and there's going to be some young kid who's going to come once a week and clean the McLaren at your home with his pressure washer with his buddies. By the time you get to that point, how much are you really going to be spending on all that per year to upkeep that lifestyle after you've already made the purchase price for those items? Let's say it's $100,000 a year with solar panels to sustain all of that lifestyle. And then let's say another $50,000 after that point because you want to charter your private jets a few times a year. So now, after the initial purchase price, if done correctly, and you have your titles sorted out and you have everything sorted out and you understand the legal implications, you're not going to be paying any income tax or state tax, because if you did any of that, you'd be going to prison. You're not going to be paying any property taxes, because if you did that, you're just an idiot or going to prison. So now you're sustaining this lifestyle at $150,000 per year. And then because you understand negotiable instruments, you can go out and get loans or whatever you want to do, or you can do all sorts of crazy things without even having to worry about making any additional payments, because the initial notes, once issued, already paid for the entire value of the loan to begin with. So you're not going to have any guilt or shame or regret connected with going out and getting loans, quote unquote, that you quote unquote never pay, which is the most hilarious and most fucking retarded thing I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. How hard is it really, truthfully, when you understand this information, to live that kind of lifestyle?
I guess it depends on whether you feel like you're worth it or not.
You literally could not have said it better, honestly. I'm very impressed by that answer. That is exactly correct. At that point, it comes down to just self-esteem. Literally.
That's all it is, guys. It's just esteem. It's you and yourself. You are your obstacle. That's it. You're your biggest barrier. It's all right here. Mindset. What's your mindset on? Are you focused on what you don't want, or are you focused on what's actually going to get you somewhere, which is what you want? What do you want? Do you want to be a tax slave? Do you want to be a slave for the rest of your life? Because,
I don't even say slave anymore. I say felon.
Felon, yeah.
Because if you're paying federal income taxes and you're white, you're a felon. If you're white and you're telling people that you're a U.S. citizen, you're not necessarily a felon, but you are literally one single word away from it. One single word. In 18 U.S.C. 911, it is a felony to say you're a U.S. citizen when you aren't one, but the word willful or willfully is one of the words in 18 U.S.C. 911. It is the only thing between you and a felony that's going to put you in a fucking iron cell for up to 3 years. Falsely and willfully. If that word willfully wasn't there, every white person saying they're a U.S. citizen should be in a fucking iron cell. And I want to say it so bad just to create a reaction. I want to say it so bad just to startle people and try to jar them out of their slumber. I want to say that I think every white person who says they're a U.S. citizen should be arrested and put into a jail cell. But it's really just, there's just one word preventing me from saying that more often. I want to say it. But it's so close to being true, but it's technically not true. But I want to say it so fucking bad all the time. I really do. It's like holding back, like, I want to say it, but I don't, because it's not necessarily entirely true, but it's a literal micro millimeter away from being true.
Willfully. We have the divine right to willfully do so, to willfully represent ourselves as so. And it's crazy that one word would separate you from a cell block there. But
it's one word. If they ever did an update on this and they removed the term willfully, everyone is a felon. Every motherfucker walking this country pretty much is a felon instantly. Like federal pound me in the ass prison, to quote one of my favorite movies of all time, Office Space. We're talking federal pound me in the ass prison felony.
Yep, you see that word? You say that you willfully do that, you get a one-way ticket to Pound Town. Enjoy yourself.
Well, it's whoever falsely and willfully. Falsely and willfully. So it has to have both. So falsely, everyone's walking around who's white saying they're a U.S. citizen is falsely. That's easy. Falsely as fuck. If you're white, you aren't a U.S. citizen, fuck you. It's false. That's false. But it's falsely and willfully. You see?
Right.
So you have to know that as a white person, you can't be a U.S. citizen, which no one knows that, and then still say it. That's the willfully part.
Yeah, man, somebody come get me.
So people say ignorance is not an excuse. Well, in this particular case, it is an excuse. Ignorance is an excuse when it comes to 18 U.S.C. 911.
Well, when's the last time they cracked open a textbook and actually reviewed this in school or in a school?
Yes.
And I would feel like this is more important information than, half the things that they're out there preaching and teaching last year. But who am I? Just someone crazy out there thinking that we should be actually educating our children as to reading definitions, taking your time with what's in front of you, knowing that you don't have to check boxes because you don't belong in a box.
Plus, even better than that, typically signing things and checking boxes is just all felonies, typically. So it actually gets even worse. Or again, 1 micromillimeter away from a felony in typical cases. Like the word membrane wouldn't even describe how thin between that and a felony. It's membrane would be a good word to use to describe how close you are between what you're doing and a felony.
Yeah, I was catching up on a stream they had released a couple days ago on that one. I'm in the garden and I'm listening to it, and I stop and I'm repeating and I'm listening to it, and I was like, man, I don't even want to call it, like, what do you call it, trickery, or like just the things that have been put in place when you start to learn and I really have to listen to some of these things or read them a couple of times just to be like, did I seriously just hear that? Did I seriously just read that? Like, I'll listen to something you say and I'll go look up some of the terms or definitions, and I'll just, like, it gives you got to sit there for a couple of minutes to process this. And I'm like, Oh, all right, let's and then it's back into it. But it really does rip your skull clean off sometimes. Thanks.
Yeah, let's say that you have someone and they're going along in life, and let's say that they've had some people bring up to them in passing that a U.S. citizen is a special class that was created through the interpretation of the 14th Amendment through a series of cases that all came to one ultimate conclusion in a case called the Slaughterhouse Cases. The opinion in that case was delivered by a man named Samuel Freeman Miller. And let's say that you just kind of heard from some crazy weirdo at some bar or God knows what. Maybe he looked like a fucking lunatic and he was doing, maybe it was someone like a fucking Charles Manson looking motherfucker. And he was telling you this stuff. And then he said that in that case, the U.S. citizen category was separated in an effort to try to give the released Negro slaves that were freed by the 13th Amendment citizenship, because they were being taken advantage of in the society, because even though they were free, they had no legal protections at all, and they had no ability to sue or anything, and they were basically just being taken advantage of very, very dramatically in the society after the 13th Amendment. In fact, it's probably a worse life than when they were a fucking slave in a lot of respects. And Samuel Freeman Miller had been I believe he was received his doctorate at the University of Kentucky, and he was a very strong proponent for the ending of slavery for many, many, many years, and I believe that's the whole reason why he got into the judicial system to begin with. The beginning of his entire judicial career was in an effort to try to figure out a way to release the slaves, even from the very beginning. And then after years of being a judge and working his way up through the ranks and becoming a U.S. Supreme Court justice, he was the one who was chosen, probably because of the amount of time and length of time that he had worked to try to get this done. This was his baby. He was the one who was basically to stand up and to give the final opinion of the court on April 14th, 1873. And he was the one who interpreted the 14th Amendment with him and his boys to say that the U.S. citizen category was going to be separated off specifically for the released Negro slaves. And you thought that this person telling you all this was bat shit insane. But you go through your life and you start thinking about it, maybe here and there a little bit. Now, let's say a year goes by and you were kind of aware of this, or maybe a little bit aware of this, or maybe you thought the guy was crazy, but you kind of thought about it a little bit, or maybe you saw something on a forum or something that kind of got you thinking about it a little bit. And let's say a year later, there's a forum and it says, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" And you say yes. Now you have to ask yourself, is that person in that moment willful? They were presented with the information. They did think about it for a moment, and then they said, no, it can't be, that's crazy. Where does it become willful? That is the answer to that question is where the activity becomes a felony. The philosophical conversation of how much does a person have to be aware of or be exposed to this information to where even if they don't believe it or can't believe it or fight against it, at what point does it become willful anyways? And that's the question, because the answer to that question is also when that activity has now converted into a massive felony. So I'm willful to the absolute maximum possible level anyone could ever be willful because I am fully knowledgeable of, I have memorized the exact quotes from all of these cases that created the situation. So it doesn't get a whole lot more willful than me, but you don't have to be as willful as me to be considered willful under the law. So the entire subject of white people going to prison because they say they're U.S. citizens hinges on one single word. And that word can be discussed at length in a court case. So, willfully or willful, it's not just because you're feigning ignorance and just because you reject the information doesn't necessarily protect you from the word willful. And that's what I don't think people understand.
Truth Speaker wants to know, is willful defined as evil motive or intent to avoid a duty or task under the law without moral certainty?
Well, it's definitely a word and a situation that if I was a prosecutor and I wanted to start prosecuting people for 18 U.S.C. 911 claims, I would just start tossing them out like candy, and I would just make them defend themselves. And I would have people gibbering and jabbering as though I've got a gun or a pistol jammed up against the palate of their mouth. And I'd have them jibber jabbering and sweating and crying and screaming and everything else, and I would make them explain it to me.
Which you can do, guys. You can always ask, can you explain that to me? Can you define that in this context for me? Don't forget that.
I would clean up this whole country in 5 minutes if I was a prosecutor. I'd be picking up white people in buses. Not because I'm racist. Because I'll tell you right now, if I started picking up white people in buses, this conversation would be in every household at every dinner table in about 5 seconds. I'd start picking up white people on the streets with armed thugs, sticking them on buses. I'd have the whole country turned upside down, and then everyone would start talking about all this shit. Everyone would figure out we're not U.S. citizens. And then I would get on national television, I'd clap my hands, I'd be like, congratulations, you stupid fucks, you figured it out. And then I'd release all the white people that I put in prison, and I'd give them all like $100,000.
Well,
in 1 week, I'd solve the entire problem.
well, let's get you on the ballot here. Right. You know what to do.
You think the riots are bad now? I'd really have some fucking riots going, but only for like a week, and then it'd be over.
Well, it is the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's how you could do it. Just start picking up white people, sticking them in cells, put it all over the media. They said they're U.S. citizens and they're white. That's why they're here. I'd say it straight up. I'd go on the mic. I'd say that these white people, we're picking up white people. Why are you picking up white people? Because they're white and they're saying they're U.S. citizens. And we're going to keep doing it. We got a long list and we're just getting started.
So are you gonna do 8 guys versus like one person rolling deep with a?
Oh, I'd have the whole military. We'd have endless black buses with iron bars, and we'd just be loading white people all day long. It'd only take about 7 days.
I mean, yeah, I really think about 7 days. You do some quick cleanup, catch and release program.
It'd be a catch and release, but they wouldn't know that. I'd be going on media being like, all these motherfuckers are going to jail for 3 years. Under 18 U.S.C. 901, I am pressing for 3 years, maximum sentence for every single white person.
How fast?
How fast do you think that would rip through the whole country?
I mean,
And then I'd say, and then I'd start the third week of March, and then by April 1st, April Fools, and then we'd have a big party, and then everybody get $100,000, and then that'd be the end of it. And then the U.S. citizen category would basically be eviscerated and burned like a fucking virus out of the country as it should be.
see, I'm telling you, like America is such a beautiful place, and the history leading up to where we are today can be beautiful and poetic and romantic and all these amazing things. So the S show that we're living in today is so convoluted. It makes sense to stick people in buses to get their attention. Let's go.
Well, the U.S. citizen category is just like a marriage license. It was supposed to be something really beautiful, and it just because of a misunderstanding, it became the biggest cancer that anyone's ever seen ever. Like, brain cancer.
A misunderstanding or a manipulation?
No, it's a misunderstanding. If you read what Samuel Freeman Miller has to say, and you read his past,
Yes,
you realize, this is not. If we would have just followed what Samuel Freeman Miller has to say, it's actually would have been just fine. I mean, in today's world, the actual law that Samuel Freeman Miller laid down will be considered pretty racist, but still, it would still be a billion times better than where we're at now.
Isn't that funny? The men that they give credit to building America are actually the ones that broke it, or have broken it.
I don't think Samuel Freeman Miller broke America. I think the misunderstanding of his work and people not reading his work is what actually destroyed America.
Well, I'm thinking that he stepped in to do something great for America, and
He
the
did.
men that they credit with making America great, the Vanderbilts, you know what I'm talking about, the those men that they credit deserve none of the credit, and men like Miller deserve credit.
Yeah, Tanny
Yeah.
Miller, a lot of the guys, like the guy who did the Marbury versus Madison, I forget his name, John Johnson, or I forget his name. These guys, in my opinion, I mean, up until the conversion of the 14th Amendment, which converted the whole country over to this nightmare, if you think about it, U.S. Supreme Court justices are a lifetime. How many U.S. Supreme Court justices have we had?
Not that many.
116 since the beginning of our country, right? So, if I do a screen share, let me see if I can screen share over your screen share. List transcripts of previous Supreme Court hearings from 1971 to present. Sure is interesting that it starts in 1971. Sure is interesting. List of every Supreme Court justice ever. There we go. So here's Roger Taney. This is the guy who gave the Dred Scott versus Sanford case. He was the 5th justice ever. And then where's Sam? Where is he at? Why is he not here? William Howard Taft. That's a pretty common name. People know that name. This is really weird. Chief justices. Okay. So Taney was a chief justice. John Marshall he's written a lot of really. He's the one who did the Marbury versus Madison case. Marbury v. Madison. 1803. He started 1801. Yeah. So appointed by, look at John Adams. Appointed by George Washington. John Adams. Jackson. Andrew Jackson, I believe. Lincoln. President Lincoln, right? So Samuel Freeman Miller, he must have been an associate list of associate justices of the Supreme Court. This is going to be a longer list. Here we go. Oh, this is cool. We got pictures and everything. I've never seen this. This is so cool. So, James Wilson. Let's see here. Which one? How far down this do we have to go to find Mr. Miller? There he is. The 32nd. Born in Richmond, Kentucky, Miller was the son of farmer Frederick Miller and his wife Patsy. He earned a medical degree in 1838 from Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky. While practicing medicine for a decade in Barberville, Kentucky, he taught himself the law and was admitted to the bar in 1847.
Okay, now that makes sense that he taught himself the law, and that's why that's so well written.
I imagine, I'm telling you, you look more into his past. He taught himself the law while he was practicing medicine. Look, favoring the abolition, sorry, I can't pronounce this word right now, of slavery, which was prevalent in Kentucky. So it's like, did he start teaching himself the law specifically to because you taught yourself the law, okay, fine, but to teach yourself the law and then wind up in the motherfucking Supreme Court as the 32nd Associate Justice, that's pretty intense. That's pretty hardcore. Like, wow, okay, wow, you really kicked some, you really, this was fucking serious for you, brother. In 1850, Miller moved to Keokuk, Iowa, which was a state more amenable to his views on slavery. So look, he's this is a problem for him, and it had been for a long time. He was born on April 5th, 1816, and by 1850, he was moving because he was irritated about slavery. So he was, how old was he? He was 34 years old when he moved to Keokuk, Iowa. He got a medical degree in 38, which would have made him 22 years old when he got his, right? 1816 to 1830, that's 22 years. So he's 22 years old when he gets his medical degree. He's practicing medicine from 22 until 32. So 22 to 32 would place, that would be 1848. So 22 to 31. At 31 years old is when he had been teaching himself the law throughout his 20s. And then he was admitted to the bar in 1847. And then right after that, in 1850, he moved to Keokuk, Iowa, because of his views on slavery. And he immediately freed his few slaves who had come with his family from Kentucky. He was active in Iowa politics, supported Abraham Lincoln in the 1860 election. Lincoln nominated Miller to the Supreme Court on July 16th, 1862. So at that point, he was 48, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 46 years old. Was that right? 46 years old?
Crushing it.
His opinions strongly favored Lincoln's positions, and he upheld his wartime suspension of habeas corpus and trials by military commission. After the war, his narrow reading of the 14th Amendment, he wrote, the opinion of the 1873 slaughterhouse cases limited the effectiveness of the amendment. Miller wrote the majority opinion in Bradwell v. Illinois, which held that the right to practice law was not constitutionally protected under the Privileges or Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment. So this case, I'm sure, if I went and looked it up, this case is the one, was a United States Supreme Court case which ruled that women were not granted the right to practice a profession under the United States Constitution. The case was brought to the courts by Myra. So I'm sure if I read this case, this is probably the case that the Bar Association references as to why people have to have a quote-unquote license to practice. But when you go back and you look at it, it's only referring to the 14th Amendment, which is just for the Negro slaves that were released, which is complete bullshit, which is why I have my law firm and I don't give a flying fuck what anybody says, and nobody fucks with me because I know that shit. I'm not an idiot. He later joined the majority opinions in United States versus Cruikshank and the civil rights cases, holding that the amendment did not give the U.S. government the power to stop private as opposed to state-sponsored discrimination against blacks. So even though he felt very strongly about freeing the slaves and giving them rights, he still was not letting his emotions get the best of him. He was still operating within the confines of the law. Because the law, his own opinions, I'm sure his emotional state wouldn't have allowed this, but because the law, and he wanted to operate strictly under what the law says, it gave the U.S. government the power to stop private discrimination. It did not give the U.S. government the power to stop private discrimination against the blacks, right? And then he's going on, and then there's more things going on here. Miller held that the federal government had broad authority to act to protect black voters from violence by the Ku Klux Klan and other private groups. And then he supported the use of broad federal power under the Commerce Clause to override state regulations, which this became the entire nightmare we now live under. But I guarantee you, if you go back and you read something like Wabash versus Illinois, you'll see that it wasn't supposed to be something bad. It was misconstrued and convoluted into the world we have now. If someone said Mr. Miller is the reason why we're in this nightmare now with the Commerce Clause, I'd be pretty quick to come in here and start reading these cases, and I would bet a lot of money or currency or horse shit or promissory notes or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, same thing.
That's not the case. He wrote 616 opinions in 28 years on the court. I mean,
that's a lot of opinions.
He sat in over 5,000 cases. And he died in 1890.
See, there's no excuse not to be able to dive into this lifestyle, guys. If you didn't have so many distractions, you'd be crushing it, getting your doctorates, your lawyer, learning law. Just put down the remote. Put down this, don't doom scroll. Read. Go read the trustee on what a person is. Like, seriously.
Yeah. It's a it's all just a big misunderstanding. And I think when you realize that, it takes a lot of the anger out of the situation.
It does. Thank you for saying that. It does take the anger out of the situation because the comprehension is like, I don't know, it's like a soothing herbal pack or something.
Yeah, Mr. Miller wanted to free the slaves, and he felt very strongly about it for a long time. And he worked his fucking ass off. He was a highly intelligent man who was able to get a law degree or become a doctor and teach himself law while practicing medicine. That's pretty impressive. Doing both of those at the same time, and then moving his way all the way up to the Supreme Court as a self-educated lawyer. That's pretty impressive. And he worked diligently for 15 to 20 years to achieve his goal, which was to release the slaves. And then on April 14th, 1873, he was able to stand up and effectively do that. From his position, that's what happened.
It's a beautiful part of history.
Yeah, so.
All right. Well, I've had you on here for quite a while. I've picked your brain on quite a few things. If you have a few more moments, there's just one more thing I'd like to dig into. Credit unions. Tell us about that. Like, this is exciting news. Did you get anywhere within the last couple days?
I submitted the NCUA initial form.
Awesome.
I don't know if I'm supposed to hear something back. I don't know how long that takes. It's just not. It's not the biggest, craziest priority for me necessarily. But it's probably something I may be digging into a little bit here soon. I don't know.
Just always questions about it.
If they call me, if the NCUA calls me and they're like, "Hey, we received your thing. We want to talk about it. Come down and visit us." Yeah, sure. I'll dress up and get my suit on and go down there in my dress shoes and do the whole thing. Sure. I mean, I don't. But in terms of my biggest priority, I feel like is still litigation. But I mean, I've got 2 cases in appeals courts. I have 2 cases in the Ninth Circuit. So you got to think the Ninth Circuit is by far the most influential circuit. It's, I can't even imagine what, if I went on like Grok or something and I typed in, what economic percentage of the overall USA GDP would be affected by a major ruling in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Case law. That's where case law is made.
Yeah. And let's see, Grok, we'll see if Grok gives me something. The Ninth Circuit jurisdiction includes California, which alone is about 14.7% of the U.S. GDP in 2024. The entire Ninth Circuit likely represents over 20% of the U.S. GDP. So out of 9 circuits, I think there's 9. 20% of the entire economy is in the Ninth Circuit. So I'm there. I am pushing. I'm doing what I can. So we'll see if, we've got that. And then we've got, if I do go down the credit union path, we've got that. If we, there's a lot of other people doing a lot of cool things. So, I just don't, I'm excited. I think we really have a lot of momentum going. I think we really have a really great thing going. It's definitely scary. There are a lot of scary things happening, and I want to push harder and harder, and I want to get more people on board, and I want to get them on board faster. But at the same time, I don't want to ever have to operate from a level of fear. So I'm always kind of careful about that. I want to operate outside of fear, but with an element of motivation and desperation in terms of, let's. There's definitely something here that should be feared, but we're not gonna get into that. But we are gonna behave with, you know what I mean? Like, we need to move. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, do you see a tiger over there? That you're aware that the tiger is there. You're not gonna do anything crazy to draw that tiger to you.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that. Let's not freak out, but let's also not be an idiot and just sit there or lay down and go to bed or something. You know what I mean?
You're not going to get anywhere if you put the covers over your head. That ostrich moment will do nothing but land you a default judgment. And then you've done what for yourself? Nothing. You just laid over, put a blanket over your head, and you're died. Like, what kind of example are you setting for like your kids at that point? If you're just going to roll over and die, don't go grab a torch and chase that tiger either. However, arm yourself with a book and a few videos. I don't know. I feel like
it's good times.
People, it really, honestly, this is speaking as a woman saying that these are good times and that these things, the litigation is not like, it's not fun by any means when you first start, because it is you gotta really see what you're carrying there, like your fear zone. That's a good exercise to do. Where's your fear zone line? And my fear zone, learning and experience and taking action through all of these things, has just like elevated my self-confidence and my self-esteem to another level. So if you're in that point where you just don't know, or you're afraid all of the time, I'm telling you that walking through the first 3 videos of Brandon's will give you more self-empowerment and self-esteem than you've had like maybe in 10 years. Who knows? It's like a big shake from a good friend. I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah. It's hard work, and it's been a long road, and it's been hard work to organize all this information and figure it all out myself. And then, if I don't share it, it's not going to make any difference, because America's going to die here soon anyway. So the whole point is learn it and then teach it as fast as possible to prevent the destruction of America.
Yeah, 2030 is closing in close on us, guys. And universal, currencies, worldwide currencies are real. And like you said, where does that fall into? Crypto falls into its own class. Fiat is what? Nothing. Sweat. It's like your carry out paper sweat. It's kind of gross. Anyway, Don't go back. We won't go back there tonight. We already sped through that a little bit. But Brandon, I thank you so much for taking the time to do any of this and share it with us, first of all. Second of all, coming here and sharing this with our audience too. Thank you. Kicking some butt, taking names. I know you got a lot. Your Rolodex must be like this, taking all those names.
Yeah, I mean, people like what I'm doing, and I like what I'm doing. So, just the world kind of revolves around that,
That's right. Well, you keep it up, Pickle King. We'll keep cheering you on. The Brian is fine, jumping anytime.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything else you'd like people to know before we go?
That's it. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and I hope you guys got something out of it, and we'll keep the train going.
If you didn't get something out of tonight, then you need to check your pulse and re-listen to this episode a couple times. There might be something direly wrong.
That's so funny. Yeah, I guess that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all right. If you can't hit by a flame with a man spitting fire, you might want to check your fire retardant situation.
You're so funny.
All right, guys, that's enough for tonight, but never enough. So I hope you'll come back and join us soon. If you can't find Brandon, then you don't deserve to.
Yeah, right. It's pretty easy these days.
We'll see you later.
Bye,
Good night,
guys.
everyone.